Ever thought about how a really familiar Bible story might actually hold some deep secrets? Maybe even things that could kind of flip how you see it.
Hmm.
We had a listener ask us to really dig into the first chapter of Samuel. They wanted those aha
Yeah.
moments, insights that hit fast but really stick.
Yeah, that's a great request. So today we're diving into 1 Samuel chapter 1. It's a fascinating journey.
And what's our guide here?
We're drawing from a podcast called The Vindication of the King, hosted by Ariel Lewis.
Okay.
And it offers a really distinctive take. It aims to uncover hidden truths in the Hebrew Bible using the text itself and teachings from the sages.
So not necessarily the Sunday school version?
Definitely not. It challenges a lot of familiar assumptions.
Got it. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack those first verses, pull out the key themes, especially those surprising interpretations from the source.
Yeah.
Or after those moments that make you go, huh, never saw it that way.
Exactly, those aha moments.
All right, let's jump in. It starts with introducing Elkanah.
Right. Verse 1. He's called a most prominent and prestigious man from Ramatham Zophim in the hill country of Ephraim.
Sounds important.
He is. But the interpretation in our source is, well, it's pretty compelling. It sees Elkanah as more than just respected.
More.
It portrays him as the secret, silent leader of the still clandestine prophetic movement.
Wow, secret leader. How do you lead then?
Simply by knowing its inevitability, just understanding the direction things had to go.
That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
Leading through insight. And the text also mentions his family setup.
Yes, 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. And this is key. Peninnah has children, but Hannah doesn't.
Seems straightforward at first glance.
It does, but it really sets up the core drama, the central tension of this whole chapter.
Okay, so then verse 3 talks about their tradition, the pilgrimage.
Yeah, Elkanah goes up yearly to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of hosts.
And who's running the show there at Shiloh?
Well, that's another layer. Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are priests there, and the source calls them corrupt.
So even with corruption at the top, Elkanah keeps the tradition going. Interesting.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? A society with issues in its religious leadership, but people still holding on to the practices.
Right. So we have this possibly prophetic leader, Elkanah, operating quietly, upholding tradition despite the problems. Then comes the sacrifice itself.
Verse 4, Elkanah gives out portions. Peninnah and her kids get theirs.
But Hannah gets something special.
A double portion. Because, the text says, he loved her more. Seems like a clear sign of his affection.
You'd think so. A simple act of love.
On the surface, yes. But verse 5 adds that crucial, heavy detail. Because to his dismay, the Lord had shut up her womb.
So her barrenness isn't just her sorrow, it's his too. His dismay.
Exactly, it's shared pain. And this context, according to the source, makes Peninnah's actions in verse 6 much more significant.
Okay, verse 6.
Yeah.
And her rival vex her sore to make her fret. Standard translation. But the source digs deeper.
Oh, much deeper. The vindication of the king suggests Peninnah wasn't just being mean, she supposedly presupposed. Well, she figured that Hannah was wicked in the eyes of the Lord.
Wicked, because she was childless.
That's the implication, and therefore God must have shut her womb. But here's the twist in the interpretation.
Go on.
The source says Hannah wasn't physically barren, she was barren only in her mind.
In her mind? How?
As a result of feeling this oppressive need to suppress her prophecies.
Whoa. So the barrenness is linked to stifled prophecy. Not a physical issue, but a spiritual or psychological block.
Precisely. That's a major reinterpretation the source offers. It connects her inability to conceive directly to a silenced prophetic voice.
That changes everything about how you read her distress.
It does. And verse 7 kind of backs this up. It says, Hannah wept, wouldn't eat. Why? Because of Peninnah's vexing, yes, but the source links it to the deep need of a prophet to express his prophecies.
So her grief isn't just personal sadness, it's tied to this suppressed spiritual gift.
Makes you think about the pressures, right? Societal or religious pressures maybe forcing that suppression.
Exactly. It reframes it. It's not just a private tragedy. It's part of a larger spiritual condition.
Then Elkanah tries to comfort her in verse 8.
Yeah, his famous line, Hannah, why weepest thou? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons?
A very tender question, showing his love.
Absolutely. He clearly cares deeply. But verse 9 is the turning point. Hannah gets up after the meal in Shiloh.
What happens then?
She rises up to do something that would reveal the great secret for her apparent barrenness. And here's another fascinating detail the source highlights.
Yes.
It says, Hannah miraculously managed to walk past the securely guarded door to where Eli the priest was sitting. Miraculously. Past a guard. What's the significance of that?
Well, the source emphasizes it. It implies maybe, divine help, that getting into that sacred space wasn't straightforward, and something supernatural might have cleared the way for her.
Okay, so she gets past the door. She's clearly determined.
Determined and in bitterness of soul, verse 10 says. And she does something radical for the time, according to this interpretation.
What's that?
She performs the long-forgotten act of the prophets. She opened her mouth and prayed unto the Lord.
Praying was forgotten. Or praying like that was.
Praying openly, perhaps pouring out her soul like this. And crucially, the source stresses her mindset. She understood that she was not destined to be wicked nor to suffer punishment.
Meaning?
As there is no such thing as predestination. That's a huge theological point the source drives home. She rejects fatalism.
So as she's praying, she's actively fighting the idea that her fate is sealed. How did that clash with what people like Eli maybe believed then?
The source suggests fatalism was pretty strong. Maybe the idea that things were just set. Hannah's prayer is a direct challenge to that.
And her prayer is a vow, right? Verse 11.
A specific vow. If God gives her a son, a man-child, she'll dedicate him to the Lord for his whole life.
And the detail about the razor.
There shall no razor come upon his head. That's the sign of a Nazirite vow. A very serious, lifelong commitment. It shows her faith in her prayer actually working. Her belief she can influence the outcome.
Okay, so she's praying this intense, silent prayer. Just her lips moving, verse 12. And Eli sees her.
He does, but he completely misreads the situation.
How so?
Well, verse 13 says he thought she was drunk. Because maybe that kind of outward, personal, intense prayer, it just wasn't common. Or it was associated with, losing control.
So he assumes the worst.
Jumps right to it. Verse 14, he accuses her. How long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee.
Wow. Talk about misunderstanding devotion.
Right. It really shows the gap between established religion and this raw personal faith Hannah is displaying. But her response, it's powerful.
Verse 15.
Yeah. No, my lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. She denies being drunk, obviously, but then she explains, I poured out my soul before the Lord. And here's the core of her belief, linked back to the source's idea.
What did you say?
Since I was not destined to be wicked, broken, or punished, therefore I can prophesy. I can change my destiny.
That is incredibly bold. She's not just defending herself, she's claiming prophecy and agency over her own fate, directly countering Eli's presumed fatalism.
Exactly. And verse 16 reinforces it. She says her complaint, her pouring out, comes because this connection to God, prophecy, has been forsaken and forbidden.
So her personal struggle is explicitly tied to this larger problem of silenced prophecy.
Yes. And she declares she's breaking that silence. She sees her barrenness not as punishment for sin, but as a result of this suppression. Her prayer isn't just give me a baby, it's an act of spiritual resistance.
How does Eli react to that?
Verse 17, he says, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thy petition. Sounds like a blessing.
But
the source interprets it with a grain of salt. It suggests Eli is still doubtful about changing destiny. Maybe he doesn't fully buy into repentance, reversing fate. His blessing is perhaps a bit reserved, still rooted in his own worldview. Okay. A blessing, but maybe not full-throated agreement with her theology. How does Hannah take it?
verse 18, she accepts it gracefully. Let thy servant find favor in thy sight. And then the change is immediate. She goes, she eats, her face isn't sad anymore.
Why the sudden change? Just the blessing.
The source suggests it's more. She understands her prayer worked, that she has, in fact, inaugurated the new epoch of prophecy and the Messiah.
Wow. She sees herself as kicking off a whole new era. That's profound.
Immense peace comes from that conviction.
Yeah.
Faith in her prayer, belief she broke through those barriers. It's a huge internal shift.
And then the narrative confirms it.
Pretty directly. Verse 19, they go back home to Ramah. Elkanah knew Hannah, and crucially, the Lord remembered her.
The Lord remembered her. What does the source make of that phrase?
It emphasizes divine agency responding, and specifically it made her aware that all power is in the hand of the Almighty, reinforcing that connection between prayer, faith, and God's action.
And the result is?
Verse 20,
Conception, she bears a son.
Samuel. And the name is significant, isn't it?
Very. Samuel means because I have asked him of the Lord.
Asked.
Yes. The source ties her conception explicitly to the freedom of asking in prophetic speech. Asking, praying, speaking freely. That's what brings new life, literally and figuratively. It connects asking directly to the coming Messianic era.
So the act of finding her voice, her prophetic voice, is what enables conception. Incredible linkage.
It really connects the themes powerfully. Then we get to the next yearly sacrifice, verse 21, Elkanah's going up again.
But Hannah doesn't go this time.
No, verse 22, she decides to wait. And her reasoning, according to the source, is significant. She believes she conceived through prayer's power, not the ritual sacrifice itself.
She separates the two.
She does. She tells Elkanah she'll wait until the child is weaned. Then she'll bring him,
And her plan for Samuel.
that he may appear before the Lord and there abide. And then she adds this amazing line, for he is destined to impact the heart of the nation forever.
She already knows his destiny, his impact.
She has that prophetic insight. And Elkanah, verse 23 shows he just trusts her. Do what seemeth thee good, he says. Even if he doesn't fully get the depth of it all, he respects her conviction.
That says a lot about him, too, about their relationship.
It really does. So fast forward, the child is weaned, verses 24-25. Hannah brings Samuel to Shiloh,
And she brings offerings.
substantial ones, 3 bullocks, an ephah of meal, a bottle of wine. It underscores the solemnity, the fulfillment of her vow. The child is young, the text notes.
They bring the child to Eli.
After sacrificing one of the bullocks, yes. And now Hannah speaks to Eli again, verses 26-28.
What does she say? Does he recognize her?
Oh, the text implies he does now. She says, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here, praying unto the Lord.
She reminds him directly.
Leaves no doubt. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath granted me my petition which I asked of him.
Proof positive her prayer worked, her destiny changed.
Exactly. And then she completes her vow. Therefore, I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he is lent to the Lord. Give him back to God.
Wow. And how does the chapter end?
With a simple, profound statement. And he worshipped the Lord there. It could refer to Elkanah, or perhaps even young Samuel symbolically. It marks the completion of the vow and the start of Samuel's service.
Okay, let's pull this together. The big takeaways from this deep dive, looking through the lens of the vindication of the king. Well, first, the incredible power of individual prayer and finding your prophetic voice.
Absolutely. And a direct challenge to fatalism, to the idea that your destiny is fixed. Hannah's story becomes about agency and change.
Right, and it foreshadows a new era, maybe even a messianic one, kicked off by this personal act of faith and resistance.
And we see leadership emerging from unexpected places, Elkanah's quiet influence, and especially Hannah's radical faith and action. It's definitely a different read than the standard one.
For sure. And for you listening, especially if you like getting knowledge and new perspectives quickly, this shows how even stories you think you know well can just open up.
Yeah, when you look at them through a different framework, like the one this source provides, you find layers you never expected. It pushes you to question assumptions.
Which leads to our final thought for you to chew on. Where else in your life, or maybe in your field of interest, are there narratives that seem straightforward? Could a closer look, maybe from a different angle, reveal some hidden depths? Could challenging your assumptions about those stories unlock something new? Are there maybe metaphorical guarded doors you could walk through just by finding and using your own voice?
That's definitely something worth pondering.